When we all agree, it feels nice most of the time, but it doesn't challenge us to think anything different, right? Innovation doesn't come from everyone saying like, oh, that's a great idea, let's just move forward. It's like, well, have we considered this? Or, what about this other aspect?
This is the Gies Download, a podcast from the University of Illinois' Gies College of Business. I'm your host, Tim Sinclair, and today's guest is Denise Lewin Loyd, Associate Dean for Equity and Professor of Business Administration and Werner Zimmerman Faculty Fellow at Gies. As you'll soon hear, Denise has a passion for knowledge and for people, and for using knowledge to help people work together more effectively. All of that appears to come easily for Denise, but what doesn't come as easily is describing exactly what she does for a living. When you are out and about, not interacting with people from academia, and someone says, "So what do you do?" How do you describe what you do?
I definitely say I'm a professor. And for me, that means I do research on diversity in teams. So I really look at how the composition of groups and, for me, status differences between individuals within the group based either on role or on characteristics. I mean, I care a lot about diversity, so I care about, demographic characteristics, age, gender, that kind of thing. So how do those things come together to impact the group dynamics and how people within the group feel? So I'm a scholar, then I'm also an educator. So I teach right now leadership in teams. I've taught a lot of stuff in that space of sort of like people in organizations. But that means I've taught leadership in teams, I've taught negotiations, I do workshops on team dynamics, and I've taught kind of every level: undergrad, master's, PhD, executive students, throughout my many years at this point.
We don't need to count.
And sometimes I say organizational behavior. A lot of people have no idea what that means. But generally, if I'm like, oh, I'm in a business school, I'm in management, they're like, oh, have I got a case study for you? You should come to my organization. And I often tell my students, that's never because they're like, we are a model of amazing leadership.
That's them saying, we're dysfunctional, come help us.
We're dysfunctional. I'm like, well, if I had $10 for every dysfunctional organization, I could retire right now. But it does help me. It reinforces and it reminds me of the importance of the work that I'm doing, because if we have better leadership and better management, we really change people's lives in an important way, because so much of us spend so much of our time at work.
Beyond it being very important work, and we will talk much more in depth about the work and what it does and what you've found, why are you doing it? We can go all the way back to when you were a kid. Like what brought you to this place where now DEI and teams and making them function better and figuring out why they don't function? What got you there?
I'm certainly, I self-identify as a nerd, and I think of it in a very positive way. As someone who is just super curious and likes to learn things, and if I could get paid just to learn more things about everything, there's like 3 more degrees I would probably go get. But when I was a kid, I liked playing school. I mean, that's kind of part of it. I liked being the teacher. So in a naive sense, before I truly understood research and the breadth of what many of the professors that I saw as I continued my education were about, teaching was sort of a draw, right? Like being curious, lifelong learning, and engaging with people through that lens. I have a background in engineering. I don't know if you knew that. So I'm civil.
I did, and not just a background. Like this is a pretty solid MIT footing, as I understand it.
It is indeed, and I appreciate that place a lot. even in that space, so like, again, nerdy math and science person, loved that and loved the equal signs. But as I got further along and like did my master's, I was not, feeling as passionate about it and was just curious about what else was out there. But I wasn't sure which direction I wanted to go in. So I decided to work after I finished my master's degree in construction, and it was construction management. And little did I fully process at the time, but construction management is working with a cross-functional team, right? Architects and engineers and subcontractors, the client, and managing individuals to create, some outcome. So I just started to really be curious about and confused by some of the dynamics that I was seeing in the workplace in terms of management and hierarchy, right? Being kind of the lowest person in the hierarchy when I started, and seeing how those dynamics played out. And also diversity. I was in construction as a Black woman. I was in Boston. I was very much in the minority on race and gender in the management space, right? There were lots of women secretaries, but there were no other female project managers when I started at the company that I worked at. So I was just experiencing some, things, not like horrible, thank goodness, no like super horror stories or anything, but just seeing these dynamics in a different way. And what still drives me now and makes me excited about talking about these issues at work, again, is in the society that in the US especially is becoming more polarized and sort of, I think between the AI algorithms, like we're getting fed just more stuff that agrees with us. For most of us, the workplace is a space where you haven't handpicked all the people that you're surrounded by, right? You have to engage with people who are different from yourself, and you are collectively engaged in some endeavor to hopefully create value of some kind in the world. So the better you're able to work together, the more value that we can create for society. And we spend a lot of our waking hours in the workplace. So to me, it's a super meaningful place to bring together these ideas and experiences and really demonstrate how we can all get value out of our differences and our different perspectives, when we engage kind of respectfully with one another.
When it comes to your research and what you've learned, what's the thing that most people don't know or realize that you wished people would know or realize?
The biggest thing is that everyone can benefit from the diversity in a team. And the differences between us, so like when we see kind of visible difference, I think many people think it's a challenge, meaning, we won't agree with one another or get along in some kind of way or whatever that is. But in fact, it's a driver for what helps make the team better. So let me explain that a little bit more. When we all agree, it feels nice most of the time, but it doesn't challenge us to think anything different, right? Innovation doesn't come from everyone saying like, oh, that's a great idea, like, let's just move forward. It's like, well, have we considered this? Or, what about this other aspect? And then even if my answer isn't quote unquote the right one, it might help you reconsider and be like, oh yeah, I actually hadn't thought about that. Like, well, let's tweak this thing this way, right? Or, maybe we can make this modification, and that's going to make this more user friendly, or, more attractive, or, just better in some way. So that's one, right? Just the presence of those differences actually helps us, reminds us that there might be information or opinion differences present as well, more so than like seeing similarity does. And then it actually allows anyone who has a different perspective to feel more comfortable sharing that different perspective. One really challenging thing about us as humans is we care not just about doing good work, but we're social beings. We care what other people think about us. And if you're at all up to date with kind of a lot of the language that people are using around team dynamics, you probably heard the term psychological safety, which is really not about suppressing people's perspectives. It's really saying, how do we create a space that allows people to share their dissent? It allows people to share when they think, oh, I don't know if that's the right thing to do, right? But the reason that it's talked about so much is because most places don't feel like that. Most places don't feel like places where someone's waiting for you to say, oh, are you I'm not sure we should do that thing, or like, did we think about this? Or it's not comfortable. So most people don't actually express their dissent, and that causes lots of problems, right? It's actually the cause of some major disasters in history, right? When somebody didn't feel comfortable speaking up about something and other people weren't listening to that dissent. Even like the Challenger disaster. There's a whole movie and analysis that talks about how that helped create this terrible, right, disaster, because people weren't comfortable speaking up enough and other people weren't listening to the people who were speaking up. So the powerful thing is that the presence of diversity actually helps manifest that. Here's the key caveat. When we value our differences, right? When we actually respect each other and we realize, maybe I don't have all the answers and I do need to listen to this other person on my team to help the team do its work better.
There's probably a sizable group of people who assume that DEI exists as a thing because it's fair. It makes things more fair. And what you're saying is, it not only does it make them fair, it just makes them better. And if we think of it only as being fair, we're missing a good chunk of why this is really important.
Yeah, I agree on all counts. I do think, there's an arc in a way, with respect to DEI. I mean, it's not a new thing, even though, the letters shifted over time, if you will. But there was a point at which I think the fairness argument was the more compelling one, because the unfairness was so stark, right? It was like very right in front of you, right? I mean, there are challenges. There's always challenges in society, but that's not the same today as it was, let's say, 50 years ago, 60 years ago in the US. There was a whole conversation around sort of the business case for diversity, which, if you're not in the weeds of it, you might have missed that. But that really connects to this idea of how it can make teams more creative, more innovative, make better decisions. There's plenty of articles that talk about that. The challenge is, and that's why I said that caveat, it doesn't always do that. And I think it doesn't do it when we don't respect each other, when we're not really listening to one another, or worse yet, when we assume someone doesn't have something of value to add because of something about them, right? Because you're from, X group, even like because you're a marketer, like you couldn't have anything important to add about this technical thing that we're talking about, right? And you can imagine that playing out in lots of different ways. So that's, from my perspective, why we don't see this direct connection between just putting people together who are different and them necessarily doing something great. There's really an important process piece. And at the foundation of that is making sure that we are encouraging people to share their perspectives, that we're listening to one another, and taking that into consideration. Like that's the secret sauce, if you will. But it is for everyone. And I always say, I'm like, diversity is, it's not a characteristic of an individual, it's a characteristic of a group. And it's about all of us and it's for all of us. And I wish that was communicated more as well.
How has your role at Gies impacted the college and the students, and what, or how do you hope it will impact them in the future? What are you trying to do based on what you're learning? Obviously, the research is important, but then doing something with it on a broad scale and a narrow scale, specifically where you work every day. What does that look like, and what are you hoping for in the future?
Well, specifically, my role as Associate Dean for Equity has been a great experience, a challenging experience, um, motivating, exhausting. But I've been really gratified and grateful to be in an institution that sees the value of engaging and having a formal space where people are thinking about the work that we do with this lens. And some of it is really about changing the culture in some ways, of expanding. So how we can engage with one another, normalizing some, like, I was saying, psychological safety, or normalizing how we try to include more people in the conversation. And some of that is about, it butts up against some of our norms of, give an example, time. So the great thing is the presence of diversity. The whole point of having teams, right? The whole point of using groups of people to solve problems and make decisions is because they have different perspectives, right? Like if we all literally thought the same thing, it would be extremely inefficient to be like, we should get 5 people that think exactly the same thing to come together just for what?
What's the phrase? If all 5 think the same thing, 4 aren't necessary, or something to that effect?
Totally, right? So, but we live in a world where our problems are complex. Like we can't, most of us don't have enough, right? We can't each hold enough to solve the problem. So we need each other. So that's the first thing, right? Like to recognize we actually do need each other. So on one hand, it doesn't make sense, like I said, right? To like, what's the value of having 5 people? It's actually inefficient. At the same time, doesn't it feel great if we walk in a room and we're like, okay, here's the decision. Everyone's like, I think B is the best answer. Like, awesome, we're done. Like, let's get out of here. Like, you got 45 minutes of your life back, right? Because that's, we're kind of in a high pace world. But if you actually ask people and you bring people together to share these different perspectives, that takes time, right? You talking, me listening, like that takes time. And it might feel less efficient in the short term, even though the value that you get out of that later, as I like to say, even if you decide to do the same thing, the way you do it might be different based on that conversation. The buy-in that you have to doing it is likely stronger based on that conversation. A broader group of people now are like, okay, I see why we made that decision, right? And I can see like the role that I play in that. So that time that it takes or took is well spent for the value that comes out of that. But that is a shift oftentimes, right? In how we do things, where it's like, just like get it done. Wouldn't it be great to just check the box, like move on to the next thing? So some of the work is about that, right? Some of it is about, modeling that, helping to make a case for how that can improve things. And demonstrating, right, that people are seeing the outcome. What I've seen so far, I mean, I can't believe I've just finished my 4th year in this role. It's incredible. Although, 2 were like pandemic years, so those are
Yeah, almost don't count.
right. We're like, was it 1 year, 3 years? We don't know. So, but what I've seen already is a willingness of people to have conversations, to really think about the practices and processes and expand them to make sure we are trying to be inclusive of, all the groups that we serve, right? Like we really have an amazingly diverse college on so many different levels, right? With respect to, where students have come from, the platforms that they're using to engage with us, right? Whether it's in person or hybrid now, or, fully remote. I mean, there are lots of things that perhaps we may have taken for granted in the past that I think we take less for granted now with respect to what is going to help our students and the members of our community really show up and do their best work. And so that's been exciting to see. And I've, heard from some people, personally as well, about the impact for them and feeling a stronger sense of community and a stronger sense of engagement with, their colleagues. And so that's extremely gratifying too. It's this isn't about like fixing something and walking away, right? It's really about staying engaged in conversations and really making sure you have a space where people can raise concerns and those concerns are listened to. And it doesn't mean that every single one is going to be acted on in the way that the person that raised the concern hopes that it might be, but that as a whole, it will help inform how the organization responds and how it engages with people. And just when you feel heard, like that makes a difference, right? Like, it makes a difference personally, that you feel that someone listened to you and cared about what you had to say.
How do you begin teaching people now? It could be students who are college students, but it might be 50-year-olds who have been in the workplace for 30 years now and just haven't done this before. I mean, if they went to any sort of high school experience like mine, even when we did group work, everybody looked like me. And I think that's the case for most. How do you start teaching an old dog new tricks, so to speak, and showing them that, one, this is something that's important and that it works and that, yes, it's uncomfortable, but that's got to feel like a monumental task?
It's a combination of things. One thing is, I'm in an academic institution where, we're about learning and we're about evidence. And many of our faculty are literally, part of our jobs is creating new knowledge. So one piece is go to the data, go to the research, right? Like show my own work, highlight work of other people that show, okay, it looks like there could be some benefit to this. So that opens up some willingness to be like, okay, like it's worth me, engaging and like waiting in here, right? So, because it looks like some good things can come out of the other side. The other thing is really personalizing in some ways. So I appreciate the point that you made about, many people, many of us, I mean, this is in part, especially in the US, we're pretty segregated. Even though we're a diverse country, that diversity is, it's kind of segregated in many ways in the country. So many of us have been in groups that feel more homogeneous on some characteristics. Now, having said that, I feel almost I've hardly met a person who, if I said to them, think about when you were in a group where you maybe didn't want to say something because you felt like it would really make you other, right? Like, even if everybody quote unquote looked like you, that you were like, I don't really agree with all that, but like, I'm not going to say anything about that because I don't know if it's going to go over that well, right? Like, we can all appreciate having had that experience. And that's exactly the thing that we're trying to prevent, right? It's like there was a time where you didn't necessarily feel that you could show up and be your full self, regardless of what that group looked like. And how much better will it be for everybody if we can show up and, really be who we are, right? Like in a value added way, right? I don't mean like burn everything down, right?
Sure. There are limits, I suppose.
Right. So I think that like making that tie, that's something that I think has been impactful in like helping people see where that value add is for them personally and in making that connection with other people. And the third thing is, again, an institution of learning, our learners are something everyone connects with, right? Like we care about, none of us would be doing this work if we didn't care about the individuals who are learning, and every one of us engages with them in some capacity. And so helping people think about how doing this will make that experience better for the population of learners that we all care about is extremely compelling. Like, how do you make your classroom more inclusive, right? How do you allow your students to do their best work because they're able to show up and ask questions and, engage and get supported in ways that are going to be better for them? Makes a lot of people really open to having these conversations.
Well, I've got to say, I felt like I had a reasonable handle on the importance of DEI and what it was and why we need it. But I have, even in the last half an hour, thought about it in some different ways. And so you're obviously teaching. That's what you do. And thank you very much for putting it so simply. And I now understand why everybody says all the good things about you. It's very, very obvious.
That's very kind of you, but I really appreciate your statement. I find it gratifying. And if I can do anything to help, individuals and by extension, right, so society, see that we're all a part of this, that there's so much to gain from engaging with one another in respectful ways for, just like the productivity of society. I think I'll be extremely gratified to play any role in like helping that narrative.
Be sure to join us for the next Gies Download. In the meantime, you can learn more about the Gies College of Business at giesbusiness.illinois.edu.